The goal of this video is to give you some guidance on how you could go about giving a Reiki session to someone else. And so I encourage you right from the outset is to take what works for you out of this video, to discard the rest, and modify it so that when you work with your clients, it feels really authentic to how you want to show up for their healing and growth. Your first step with preparing for your client's arrival is to do a short Gassho meditation along with a Kenyoko, and then taking a moment to set any intentions that you might have for your client. And the simplest intention can be holding space for them to receive whatever it is they need in this moment in time. And over time, you might develop your own ritual on stepping into your role as a Reiki practitioner. And so it's important to do what feels right for you. And this practice is really about getting out of your own way so that you can show up for your client's healing and growth. Your next step in preparing for your client's arrival is to send Reiki to the 7 directions in your room. So those 7 directions are the 4 main directions, above and below, and then also the center of the room. And then you can infuse Reiki also into the process of just setting up your massage table and preparing the space so that they have a warm, comfortable place to relax and receive. When working with a client for the first time, I highly encourage you to develop a waiver that works for whatever services your Reiki business or holistic healing art business provides. And the waiver just sets the tone for the interaction that you have with your client. It protects you, it protects your business, and it also sets the appropriate boundaries between you and your clients so that you can establish that right from the outset. So I highly encourage you to develop a waiver that works for you. And of course, you don't need a waiver if you're just not working professionally or if you're just offering Reiki to friends and family. But once you start offering Reiki professionally, developing a waiver is a big part of that. Your next step in providing this Reiki session is to sit and talk with your client. And it's probably one of the most enjoyable parts of a Reiki session, where you get to ask your client why they want to receive Reiki. What's that underlying motivation? How do they think that Reiki could help them? It's also a great time for you to explain a little bit more about the practice of Reiki and set the tone for their session so that they can really relax and receive it. In this next section of the video, I intentionally left the audio on just so you can see how I'm working with my client in real life. It was her first time doing a Reiki session with me, so I was just explaining to her, how to orient on the massage table. And then also you'll see me asking her consent for a few things. And so that is part of a trauma-informed practice, giving the client an opportunity to be in the driver's seat of their own experience. So if they weren't comfortable having their head covered, or if they would not want to have smoke in the room for any reason, they have that opportunity to voice their preferences. And as just a very brief disclaimer, I wanted to mention that this video isn't about offering trauma-informed Reiki services. That's a training in and of itself, which I highly encourage you to take if you want to work with people in your Reiki practice around addressing trauma. But these are just a few caveats that I include in my Reiki sessions just to make that extra layer of comfort, accessibility, and ownership for the client so that they can really be in the driver's seat of their experience. Okay, so come up, and I'm just going to take this from you, and then you'll put your knees up on that. And then would you like the blanket over you?
I think I'm okay. I'm pretty warm.
Okay. Let me, can you lift your feet up one more time?
Yeah.
Great. But would you like me to place this over your eyes?
Sure. I'm going to turn off the light. Sorry.
So if if we started with a little sage or Palo Santo? Would you like that?
Sure.
So next thing happening in this Reiki session is I'll be setting an intention for the client. And I'll leave this again in real life just so you can get a little flavor of how I go about it. I highly encourage you to modify any invocation so that it feels really authentic to you. I also can suggest that perhaps for some clients you might not do an invocation out loud for them if you think that it might make them feel uncomfortable in any way, or you uncomfortable in any way. So it's perfectly fine to create that invocation and do it internally as well. Just take a few deep breaths. Feeling like your whole body's breathing in, like your whole body is exhaling. And if it's useful, just visualizing a white light fully surrounding your body. Inside of this white light, this safe space for you to bring your whole self here into this moment, into this session. Inside of that white light is fields of protection around you, supporting you to let go of energy that doesn't serve you, isn't supporting you, isn't yours. Also supporting just a protection around you so that you can feel safe to receive this blessing of love, light, and healing that's gathering for you today. So all that we've talked about thus far is really preparing and setting the tone for the Reiki session. But here now is when the Reiki session really begins. And so you see I'm starting with a Biosin scan. I'm feeling and connecting energetically to the client over their head and then scanning the body. And as I do these Biosin scans, you'll see that I have a few hot spots that I'm feeling and sensing, and pausing in those hot spots, offering Reiki, and then I'll go back and address those specific areas throughout the session. Here is the first Reiki hand position I'm using. So I'm starting at the crown of the head, and then you'll see I shift to the ears. And in real life, this was a 60-minute session, and I spent about 3 minutes on each hand position. In the next hand position, I'm shifting from the ears to the shoulders. And here I shift from the top of the shoulders to the sides of the shoulders. This next hand position helps open the energy of the torso and is good for providing energetic balance for the client. So I'm placing one hand on one shoulder and then one hand on the opposite hip. So here I am just switching sides, and you'll see me doing a little bit of a Biosin scan as I transition to the other side. The hand positions that I've used thus far are fairly formulaic, meaning that I typically use that same sequence of hand positions with most of my clients. But here I'm starting to get a little bit more creative and intuitive with this particular client, listening to the feedback that I'm getting from her energy body, and now placing my hands on her crown and her belly. Then you'll see me shifting from her belly to her heart and her head. And you can't see it, but I am asking permission to touch my hand to her heart. And sometimes that particular area can be sensitive for some clients. These next few hand positions are a little hard to see, but I'm placing my hand on the back of her neck and my other hand is on the top of her wrist. And I'm sharing this with the client's consent, but the client had cysts on both of her wrists and also some neurological stuff that was affecting the side of her face. And so just to address that particular client's concerns and needs, I'm treating these specific areas. In this next hand position, I have one of my hands is underneath the client in her mid-back kidney area. So I'm treating her kidneys, and my other hand is on her outer left hip. And then you see the hand on her belly is her own hand. In this portion of the Reiki session, I am treating the left side of this client's face. And I'm sharing this with permission, but she was experiencing and has been experiencing ongoing numbness in the left side of her face. And so we're treating the left side of her face with one hand, and then with my other hand, I'm resting on her left wrist, which has a cyst. In this section, I am treating the back of the sacrum. So I slid my hand underneath her, right underneath the sacrum, and then my other hand is resting on her left outer hip. As you can see thus far, I've been using some formulaic hand positions and then also hand positions that are unique to the client's needs. And so at this point, I'm going to flip her over onto her belly. And just to say that for a different client, I might also have spent some more time treating the knees and ankles and feet. But in this case, it felt like those other issues seemed more relevant. Okay, so now that she is on her belly, I am doing another Biosin scan, just feeling for energetic hot spots on her back body. In this next portion of the Reiki session, I'm going to be applying a specific technique that's listed in the Hayashi Healing Guide. And so the Hayashi Healing Guide is in your Reiki Level 1 manual. And this technique is called the blood cleansing technique, or Ketsuki Kokan. And this specific technique I'm rubbing the spine. So I'm rubbing the spine fairly vigorously, then I'm rubbing the sides of the spine along her arms. In some cases, I might rub the outsides of the legs and then the backs of the calves, and then also, doing some gentle sweeping and patting on the feet. And so I should mention that this is my own application of this technique. I have learned different ones that stem from Japanese Reiki, but they're very complicated and include a lot of different parts and require some one-to-one training with somebody who's skilled at it. I'm not particularly skilled, but I find that, this rubbing of the back is great to help release stagnant energy on the back body. It can release energetic cords for the client. And oftentimes with a client, I say this is just a Reiki back rub, which I find is very soothing and is just a great way to complete the Reiki session for most clients. So I hope that gives you a good flavor of what it can look like, and encourage you to try it and practice it on people and get their feedback. And as you get more and more feedback with it, you get stronger and feel more confident and capable in your Reiki capacities. After completing the blood cleansing technique, I move to the client's feet, and I'm going to spend probably about 2 to 3 minutes on the client's feet, giving her Reiki, giving her an extra opportunity for some sacred grounding before we complete the session. As I complete that final hand position, I'll move to the side of the client and bring my hands together in Gassho. And as I'm doing this, I'm silently inside of myself expressing gratitude to the client, to myself, to Reiki, and to all that was received in the session. So offering my gratitude there. And then we'll culminate the session by sealing her energy in and just sweeping from her head to her feet 3 times. And during that time, I might be speaking a little bit with the client, just offering some words of closure for her, and then inviting her to get up off the table whenever she feels ready. After the session is complete, it's a great opportunity to have a little chat with your client, talk with them about their own experience of the session, if they had any strong energetic sensations in the treatment or any final questions that they might have. In some cases, a client might be interested in hearing what you thought or experienced as you were, kind of in their energy field. And so in that case, it might be useful to share whatever insight or intuitions that you experienced in the session that feel relevant to them. But please know that you don't have to share that with a client, and especially to know that if the client doesn't feel open to that, or if that feels intrusive or invasive to them, then, you never have to share anything to them or reflect anything back to them. And then always great after an awesome Reiki session to give a good hug if the client is open to it, and then send them on their way, fully infused with the good vibes, the healing, and the energy that Reiki can provide. After your Reiki session is over and your client is on their way home, it's a great time for you to do some energetic hygiene. So the skills that you learn in Reiki level 1 that will help you with this is Kenyako, doing some grounding, maybe washing your hands, and in an extreme case, you could do a salt bath as well to help clear your energy. But on an emotional, spiritual, and energetic level, it's also really helpful to release the results of the session back to the universe and back to the client, and letting Reiki do the rest of the healing that might be appropriate in that particular situation. It's also a great time for you to receive any insight from the session. So integrating your experience of that treatment. What did you learn about the flow of energy? What kind of energy did you experience when working with this particular person? Are there any insights about that session that are helpful for you personally? And how can you weave that and integrate that into your life in a way that feels most authentic to you? So I created this video just to offer you some support and guidance on how you might go about giving a Reiki session. And so I encourage you to use what works in this video and to continue to refine and adapt the process so it feels really authentic to you. And if you don't feel inclined to give Reiki to others, there might be some aspects that you can take with you about giving Reiki sessions to others, and maybe you can incorporate it in your life in a different way that feels meaningful and helpful to you. So there's definitely freedom to do that. And I just want to thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope it was really helpful and informative. If you have any questions about this material, feel free to reach out and ask. And again, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.